And I
And
think it also ties, um, it comes back to a really large question. So you have sort of education and you have sort of ad tech. And when we say ad tech, we're usually referring to uh, companies that raised venture funding and at some point want to reach venture scale and venture scale outcomes. And they can be an IPO, it can be a really large exit. But those are different things. Um, it's very hard for you to apply um, a traditional venture scale playbook to education. Lots of ed techs try to do that, but like that's hard. It's not easy. And so if you look at education companies or ed techs that reached scale, most of the venture scale ed techs, they're stepping into the entertainment piece as well. There are very few ed techs that reached venture scale whilst keeping in mind, actual more hardcore education. We'll use that term
yeah,
kind of loosely, but actually tracking skill development, that's very hard to do at venture scale. And so the more you sort of have to make decisions and choices to reach certain levels of scale and revenue, um, the maybe the further and further away you go from, all right, maybe we have a problem here, which is some people, they're not even finishing high school and they have a hard time comprehending text. So the more it's very hard to, fix this whilst actually delivering venture returns. And like, that's one of the major challenges that the whole ad tech space kind of faces.
what do you mean? Can you clarify a little bit over there that a lot of the
Yeah.
edtags are not really fitting into the expectations of or the game of venture funding?
Yeah.
What do you exactly mean by that?
Well, we can use a few examples. Maybe if you look at public benchmarks, you have, for example, Udemy, right? That's a public benchmark. Udemy stock. It's currently trading at, what's their market cap? 1.6 billion market cap. Um, that's in a 25-year history. That's not great, right? That's not great. A great, a public benchmark for the ad tech space
Mhm.
being worth 1.6 billion after 25 years. That's not incredible. If you look at Udemy, even then, if you look at Udemy, is that really an education company? Or is that more of a marketplace? Like, do you actually
Mm,
go to Udemy for an education purpose, or you improving specific? It's kind of entertainment. You just buy a lot of courses and you watch some of those, and sure, you learn new things, but
yeah.
you also learn new things watching YouTube videos. And so, the more you try to reach this level of skill, which in the education space is hard anyway, the more you sort of have to, move away from actually tracking, are people learning specific topics on each one? Because the really big problem is, you have one layer. So you have maybe the um, society should improve on
Mhm.
things. And that's very few people finishing high school. It's poor education system. It's people not having access to money or the resources to study. Like, this is okay. We should fix this as a society, right? Okay, cool. And then you have another layer of challenges, which are for software engineering, for example, and what Henry does and what we do sort of. You only have like a certain percentage of the population who's willing to spend like 6 months debugging stuff on Stack Overflow. And that's like another layer that makes it hard to reach like public stock level of scale, doing like actual education. Is Udemy doesn't really care if someone's spending 6 or 8 months on Stack Overflow. No one uses Stack Overflow anymore. Everyone's doing ChatGPT, but no, Udemy doesn't care about that. Henry doesn't, and we used to. We don't anymore because we're moving towards this direction. But like, that makes it hard to do this type of education at scale.
Yeah, and,
Okay.
and and also when you see these big companies in education, they're not focusing one single problem. What you usually see when you go out of this Udemy, that as Fabio was saying, is more like a marketplace. You
Mhm.
see these huge education conglomerates that have a bunch of solutions in a bunch of different verticals, and all of them bring some revenue to achieve scale, right? For example, in Brazil, you have different groups. Let's say Arco, that had some few news these last weeks, that Arco has different revenue streams in a bunch of different verticals in education. So it's hard to get scale when you focus in one single problem and one single type of product. You need to, because of the second layer and the scale you get in that second layer, you need to bring a more broad solution and product to the market in order to achieve scale. And this is even worse when you analyze the unicorn status, right? Because when you see the unicorns you have in education, they're almost, I would say 95% of them in just three markets. So it's the US, China, and India. So basically, when you try to create these huge education companies outside and big market with the same rules, with the same currency, with the same cultures or whatever, it's hard, and you need to bring a lot of different pieces to your solution to achieve the same amount of scale. So that creates an even more complex uh, discussion for founders when they try to scale is, okay, we need to move to new markets, or we need to bring more products, or how are we going to reach that scale that a US company can get only focusing in the US, right?
If you have a playbook that works well in China, you try to copy and paste that in India, it breaks. And you have a model that works well in India, try to copy and paste that in Latam, it breaks. And it just keeps breaking all the time because people are different, cultures are different, societies are different.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
reaching venture scale requires like local teams doing work and local teams deploying budgets and deploying capital to figure out what those exceptions are and fixing those exceptions. The problem is, if you have local teams for Goldman Sachs, there's just a lot of money. If you have local teams selling courses and education, like there's not that much money to justify the amount of budget and capital you have
Yeah.
to allocate. So it just makes the thing harder. Doesn't mean that um, there are no upsides. So definitely, if you crack these things, you'll see really good returns. And you have examples. You have like Cambly, great example. They've done this. They've ran in playbook. Great company, incredible company, super valuable. Preply, another great example, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you have folks who've actually captured the returns after going through the effort, but it is effort. It's a lot of effort.